Back in 2013, I was living with my ex at the time who lived near a nice country village, and as I was in between jobs at the time, I picked up a job at a local garden center. It was casual retail work, fairly decent pay and easygoing enough that I could take a coffee break frequently and wear basically whatever I liked as long as I wore my work polo shirt. It was walking distance from my ex's house and full of people of all ages who were the most lovely people I ever met. Most of the regular customers who came to the garden center were usually sweet old people who would visit the cafe because we had free teas and discounted lunches for OAPs if they had a store card. So you often got to know all of them, and some of them we gave nicknames. Most of them sweet, like Pink Hair Lady, a badass 80-year-old grandma who wore a tasseled leather jacket and bright pink hair. Then there was a camper van couple who used to drive a really cool camper van with bright orange flowers painted on it. You get the idea. With Creepy Artist Man, though, he gave most of the young girls weird vibes. He wore a straw hat, was in his late 40s, had round gold-rimmed glasses, and would wear strange graphic shirts with naked women on them, or Professional Pussy Patrol sort of slogans on the back. He always wore ripped jeans where his knees were always hanging out of them, which were always dirty with paint or mud or something. He had this weird half smile that would never leave his face, and a kind of leer that made people feel uncomfortable. He would take off his glasses and clean them constantly, which kind of made you feel like he was trying to get a better look at the girls who work there, especially the younger ones, 16-plus cool leavers usually. Anyway, it was a roasting hot summer's day, and I had gratefully accepted the job of watering the hanging baskets outside, where I could avoid the humid, sweaty heat of the greenhouses. I was wearing black shorts and my red polo and my tool belt to prune and deadhead plants as I went. With the house in my hands and sunnies on my face, I was busy but enjoying the solitary job at the quietest part of the garden center.
Well, hello there.
Out of practically nowhere, he slipped out behind some wooden trellises and looked me up and down, smiling with his weird, too small teeth. His eyes lingered on me for what felt like an uncomfortable few seconds, and I turned off my hose and asked him if he needed anything. He shook his head and kind of shrugged, still smirking at my legs. "Okay, sir, have a nice day. Let me know if you need anything." I turned to continue.
I've never seen you here before. You're a new one.
Huh? Me? Well, I've been here for 8 months now.
I must have missed a memo that a beauty like you started. You have a nice tan. You look young.
Thanks. I'm 23. Anyways, I have to get back to work.
Nice to meet you, Casey Cat Lady.
I suddenly remember my name badge and get slightly irritated that he now knew my full name. I make a beeline for the smoking area where the tool shed was, with an excuse to grab some smaller gardening gloves, and by the time I returned to the floor, he had left. As the weeks went by, he would come into the store regularly, usually mid-afternoon, coincidentally, or so I thought, around the time I started my shift. Most of the time I was the only cashier, so I would have to serve him. He would buy the most smallest, pointless things, like floristry wire or a tiny bag of birdseed. It seemed like he would purposely make a purchase with the intention of interacting with me. He would make a comment about my appearance, statements mostly like, "You have your hair different today, yesterday you had it down, you have new glasses," or "That's a different lip color to yesterday." He would always announce my name loudly and deliberately during every interaction. I felt uncomfortable, but I was 23 and just politely shrugged it off. Around Christmas time, I was decorating the artificial trees, and he cornered me in the forest of them at the back of the store. He jumped out from behind one and made me jump, to which I was kind of pissed about him doing because I dropped a glass ornament and it had smashed. He bent down also and tried to help, grabbing my wrist and telling me not to touch the glass. His grip was scarily tight and forceful, and his hands were clammy and gross. I slipped my hand out of his grip and asked if I could help him with anything. That's when it got weird. He pulled out a leaflet from his back pocket and told me he was an artist and had a Christmas art show happening in the local church hall, and he wanted me to go with him. He told me that he was a painter, and he thought I would like his work. I had never indicated I was interested in art, to him or anyone else for that matter, which is why I thought it was strange. I asked him if he wanted me to pin the leaflet to the local event board, and he reached out and touched my arm and said,
"No, the invitation is specifically for you."
He pointed his finger and jabbed it into my breast as he said,
"You."
So I'm standing there in a dark corner, obscured from view by artificial Christmas trees, just kind of cornered by this guy who was touching me. I cringed away and said, "I was busy with my boyfriend that day, sorry," and kind of scampered off. I remember feeling really strange after that. The fact that he grabbed my wrist and jabbed his finger into my chest that way. I told a few of my colleagues about it, and they all told me they would warn me next time he was in the store, so I could maybe hang out at the storeroom until he was gone. Well, that memo must have missed a few of the temp Christmas staff, because one day I get told by one, "Your friend is asking for you at the tills." It wasn't unusual for my friends to stop by, as it was fairly popular for gifts, etc. So, thinking it was maybe my ex's mom or something, I head to the till and there he is. He's holding a piece of paper. I cringe, but he had seen me now, so I walk over and ask him what he needed of me. He passed the paper over and asked me to open it. Folded up was a drawing of me, with exaggerated breasts and cartoon-like eyes watering the hanging baskets in a sexual kind of position. I kind of stood there and said thank you, but I couldn't keep it as I thought it was inappropriate to take gifts from customers. I handed it back to him and he kind of looked at me with his angry stare. He turned around and walked out without another word. By this point, I had had enough. I knocked on my manager's door and told him about the whole scenario that just happened, and all the previous interactions I had with him over the past year. He watched the CCTV and agreed that it was so strange the way he gave me this gross picture, and told me he would talk to him if he came back. He praised me for my reaction to his advances and said I was doing the right thing and he would try and see him off next time. The next day was a Sunday and I was not due into work. My boss called and tells me he just received a call from HQ stating that an anonymous caller had called in to report a staff member inappropriately coming on to a customer. The staff member they had described and named was... The caller had said that I had been inappropriate towards him at work, offered to have sex with him and all that, and that I had been pursuing him for over a year. The jerk even described a fictitious relationship we had had, and ranted loudly about how I had been cheating on my boyfriend before hanging up. HQ luckily didn't believe a word, as my manager had already mentioned the guy to one of the higher-ups, but they thought it was wise to let me know about this crazy guy and suggest I report it to the police. The next day, I did just that. The officer I spoke to said that he matched the description of a man who was a local pest, somebody who often harasses younger girls in a local area. He was also known to stalk girls in his car and had attempted to abduct a young girl 4 years ago. The police officers assured me they would file the report and talk to him officially, and that he was not allowed in the garden center or anywhere near me again. And if he did show up, I was to call the police and he would be arrested. Unfortunately, though, it never stopped him sending a ranting letter to my workplace, addressed to me, saying he would kill himself if I didn't take him back and receive his gift he drew of me. Fortunately, the police saw this as an unsolicited contact, and he was thankfully arrested. So, creepy artist guy, let's not meet ever again.
My dearest Angela, your beautiful lush hair flowing in the wind as you carried your groceries out to your car was the most elegant event I have ever seen in my life. When you got out of work and accidentally spilled your coffee on your coworker and you decided to help clean it off her, it proved to me that you are a wonderful soul. When you were clipping your toenails, you saved them in a pile so they wouldn't go everywhere. These are just small events that make me fall for you. I'm proud to say that I truly love you.
That note was taped to my window about 3 days ago, sealed in an envelope. Someone has been leaving notes for me for the last month or so. I've tried going to the police with the first note, but they thought I was crazy and conceded that I just wanted attention. I haven't tried going back. To be honest with you, I kind of enjoyed the notes. I enjoy being the center of someone's world. I know that if I tell my parents about these, they'd freak out, so I haven't yet. As long as he doesn't do anything to me, I guess I'm fine with it. The weird thing is, this morning the delivery man dropped off a sealed box on my front porch. I opened it and it was a DVD. I guess he made a video for me? I opened it and put it into the DVD player. Static. It was a man sitting at a bench by the lake, back turned to the camera.
My dearest Angela, I'm so glad that you decided to watch this video. I guess that I'm getting closer to finally introducing myself. Just the thought of that makes me filled with excitement, but also anxiety. I have a tendency to fall for people too easily, but I really hope you are the one. I hope that you are the person that completes my world.
He stood up and turned to the camera. He was wearing a large black hat with a rim, a brown trench coat, dress pants, a black button-up, and dress shoes. He dresses really well. I kind of fell for him at this point. I wanted to know who it was.
Angela, I've been watching you for over a month now, and I can say that you are the most perfect human I have ever observed. Ever. I've fallen so deeply in love with you that it makes me sick sometimes. Lovesick. Well, that's all for now. I'll introduce myself to you soon enough. I love you.
Static. Oh my goodness, my stalker is actually hot, like insanely hot, and rich, potentially. I really wanted him to introduce himself to me. I wouldn't mind meeting him. I know in these circumstances I probably shouldn't want to meet him, but I've been lonely lately and been wanting some companionship, you know? It isn't too much to ask for. That night after work, I wore my silk pajamas. They were a little big on me, but extremely comfortable. I got ready for bed as usual, but I couldn't sleep. All I could think about was the man in the DVD, how he was dressed so well, his voice was like music to my ears. I kind of wanted to stay awake to see if he would come once again. but I fell asleep after laying down for a short time. When I woke up in the morning, I wasn't wearing the silk pajamas anymore. I was wearing my usual shorts and t-shirt to sleep. I swear that I remember wearing my silk pajamas. I went to the washroom to check my laundry basket, and surely my work clothes from last night that I changed out of were there. Someone changed me out of my clothes and put on new ones for me. Someone was in the house last night. I ran outside my room, and sure enough, everything was in order. I looked on the living room table, and there was a DVD there. My Dearest Angela, it was titled. I opened it with anxiety and put it into the DVD player. Static. Oh my God, it's me, sleeping.
My dearest Angela, how I am so glad that we finally met. I've seen you on the street. I've walked past you many times. I can smell the shampoo you use. I've touched your skin before, but not this delicately. I hope that I won't wake you, but if you do wake, please know that I will restrain you and we'll have some fun. If you don't wake, I'll just take a little memoir of you until the next time.
I was watching myself being undressed by this man. He was wearing a black sweater, blue jeans with his hood on, and a baseball cap to cover his face.
Angela, you are so beautiful. You are as divine as an angel. I hope that you see this video, that I've seen the most intimate parts of you, the most intimate moments of you when you are sleeping. Please know that I mean no harm to you unless you fight me. I love you.
He took my favorite pair of shorts and t-shirt from the drawer. It was like he knew everything about me, what I enjoyed wearing, where everything in my room was. He dressed me and left. The next morning I called sick into work. I was too afraid to do anything. This man could come into my house and do anything to me. He could have killed me, but he didn't, thank God. I peered out my window to see if there was anyone on the street and suspicious individuals, but I couldn't see any. I got in my car and drove towards my workplace to see if anyone was following me. Sure enough, I saw a silver Toyota Camry not too many cars down, following me since I took a left off my street. He knew exactly when I would go to work and the route I would take. I knew it was him. I continued to go towards my workplace to make sure that I had the right person, and when I parked my car and walked up the steps of my workplace, I turned around. I spotted that silver Toyota Camry as he drove off. As soon as he drove off, I got back in my car and drove towards my parents' house. I rang the doorbell as soon as I could, as soon as I parked my car outside their house. "Mom, open the door, please. I know you're home, please." I was sobbing at this point, worried that if I was outside for too long, he'd notice me, and he'd notice where my parents live. The door opened. "Angie, what is wrong? Come inside." Immediately I ran for the blinds. I closed them all and turned on a little lamp in the living room. "Mom, sit down, please. I need to tell you something." "Honey, what's wrong?" "Mom, I have a stalker. He was in my room last night and he undressed me and took my pajamas, then put new clothes on me." "What? Have you called the police?" "No, I thought it was fun and games at first, but then he decided to come into my house. If he knew how to do that, he could do anything, Mom." "Joe, come here!" My father ran down the stairs. "Cher? Angie? Oh my God, what's wrong, baby?" "Daddy, I have a stalker, and last night he came into my house." "Baby, I'll contact my friend who's part of the police. I'll take care of it, okay?" "Okay." My mother held me in her arms as I was sobbing. afraid at what happened last night. I thought everything would be fine. I thought my parents would take care of me. That night I went into the guest room and lay down in a bed. The room was on the second floor of the house, with the window toward the back of the house, so I felt a little safer that he wouldn't find me there, and if he did, he wouldn't be able to climb to the second floor of the house. I changed into my pajamas I borrowed from my mom and went to bed. I heard something, like a dull noise. "Mom?" No response. "Dad?" No response. I stepped out of my room and heard a door close downstairs. It was a back door. I looked towards my parents' room, and the door was slightly opened. I opened the door. "Mom? Dad? Honey," my mom was gasping for air. "Get out of here." I turned on the light. My eyes opened wide, mouth dropped, tears began to flow down my face. My father's head was dropped on the floor, severed from his body, which was stabbed many times. My mother had her throat cut and was laying in blood pooling underneath her. I screamed in horror, crying, anxious. There was a DVD. I walked towards the DVD and it was labeled, "You shouldn't have run away. I missed you." I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go. He'll always find me. He killed my parents. I didn't watch the DVD that night. I couldn't sleep, but I got a text in the morning from an unknown number. "Angela, watch the DVD. Help, please." I worked with a guy. We had a work outing which included drinks. I got a little too drunk to drive home, so he offered me a ride. A few others accepted the ride along with me. He dropped them off first and dropped me off last, and he asked if I had feelings for him. I told him I thought he was cool because we had similar interests. I then promptly reminded him of our no fraternizing agreement we signed before we started working here. I also told him that I wasn't interested in him romantically. From that evening on, he would always find ways to tell me he had hot dates that would then cancel on him, and he would then ask me if I wanted to go for drinks. It felt like he was trying to make me feel bad, so I would go with him, but I never accepted. He asked me out to dinner dates and the movies a handful of times, which I all declined, and reminded him I had no interest in him that way. A few of my other coworkers caught him looking for my phone, I assume for texts from other guys. He accused our other coworkers of sexually harassing me when he saw we were friends on Snapchat, or text, even though there wasn't any type of sexual relationship going on between them and I. He would send me videos of me dancing at a club to our coworkers. Meanwhile, I had no idea he was there or that the videos existed. I had multiple of them coming to me asking if I had any knowledge of the videos and if I felt safe. He showed up to my house a couple times without me knowing or inviting him. He knocked once and took off, and the other time he just stood there and left without knocking. We only knew this because of my roommate's motion sensor security cam would send us notifications and videos of when there was activity. My biggest mistake was accepting another ride from him after all of this. I was in a group setting again, so I thought I would be safe. My other coworkers were sort of aware of it, so they asked if I could be dropped off first. He went about dropping them off first. I stayed in the back seat and he begged me to move to the front seat. I didn't. At the end, he demanded why I wasn't interested in him and why I didn't like him since he was such a nice guy. At this point, I was so furious and honestly terrified I started screaming at him and pointing out all the times I've told him I wasn't interested and declined his invitations. I opened the door while we were moving and he slammed on the brakes. I think I startled him. I jumped out and sprinted home. Not 10 minutes later, I got texts from him again, asking when I lost interest in him and if it's because he's too nice, or if it's because he gets too many other hot dates. As if I didn't spend 5 minutes telling him I was never interested and didn't sprint out of the car. I blocked him on everything, brought it up to our manager the next day, filed a report, and then put my 2 weeks in. A few years ago, during what was probably the darkest period of my life, I worked overnight at a local Walmart. 6 days a week, I would spend 9 p.m. to 7 a.m. stocking anything from fishing lures to makeup. I've never been in a more depressing environment. Everyone was really apathetic and too caught up in their own depressing lives to care about anything or anyone else. This included the managers. Walmarts have a generally weird vibe to them anyway. But this was a 24-hour supercenter in rural West Virginia, so you can imagine the characters, meth and opioid addicts mostly, that would show up throughout the night. We had no security guard and from what I have come to understand, a lot of cameras, especially in the parking lot, but they haven't worked properly in a while. Being one of the young female overnight stalkers, I encountered my fair share of unwanted advances, but the one who took the cake was the guy who would show up every time I went outside for a smoke break. Regardless of the time, 2 a.m., 4 a.m., 6 a.m., it didn't matter. Dude would appear around the corner and try to strike up a conversation with seconds of me stepping outside. It didn't matter what entrance I used, and there were 3. At first, I assumed he worked there. Why else would anyone voluntarily lurk around a shitty Walmart all hours of the night? Pretty much everyone on that shift smoked during their 2 nightly 15-minute breaks, so it wasn't out of the question to think he was doing the same. Maybe the timing was just a coincidence? But no, I came to find out he didn't work there. Even though he often wore a dark blue t-shirt just like an overnight employee. I stopped going outside alone, and would only venture outside with one of my guy friends, particularly one I've been friends with since middle school. Even their presence didn't deter him, and it kinda became a store-wide joke. I was weirded out, but not alarmed until he started getting a little more aggressive. He'd ask me if I was seeing anyone and would ask me out pretty much every chance he got. I was playing GTA 5 at the time, so I came up with a story about my scary long-distance boyfriend Trevor from Northern California. Even then, he wasn't fazed. I was done feigning politeness and began ignoring him. One night, when my main guy friend had called in sick and the others were working on something on the opposite side of the store, I went outside with 2 older women in my area. After a few minutes, they went inside, and just as I was about to follow them, Walmart Creeper suddenly appeared. Pretty sure he'd been waiting around the corner. And as soon as he appeared, he insisted on me going to his car with him to see something, taking my hand in his. Not hard, but I was still pissed he touched me. I'm genuinely an angry person anyway, so I lost my shit. I ripped my hand away and sprinted inside. I reported him to the head manager that night, and found out he had a cousin who worked in the back unloading trucks. Apparently, he liked to hang out with his cousin at work. The cousin apologized profusely and said he'd talk to him, but the management was a whole other level of shitty, and didn't even say anything to the creeper, let alone ban him from the premises. I ended up quitting specifically because of the horrible management, although it was over an entirely different situation. Found out through a friend that the guy, who was still hanging out at the store every night and was still doing his creepy thing with other women, tried like hell to learn my name and where I lived. He was apparently asking around about me for weeks after I left, before disappearing himself. I can't help but keep thinking about how those parking lot cameras haven't worked in such a long time, and if anyone would have cared enough to notice if I just disappeared on one of those long, tiring work nights. It was the fall of 2007 and I was 15 living in New York. I was a competitive athlete in high school, the type who got up before school for workouts and trained for long hours after. With recruiting season a year away, I was under tremendous pressure to perform in my sport as well as in the classroom. I was struggling to keep up in calculus at the time, so my mom suggested I get a tutor. She made an appointment with a teacher friend of hers who really knew his stuff. I'd been going to him regularly, probably 3 times a week for a month before I met Alex. Alex had a tutoring session after mine and we'd cross paths every week. It had never been more than a glance and a smile, as I was incredibly shy and terrified of boys. He was tall and blonde with piercing blue eyes, so naturally, I thought he was cute. One day, my tutor had to change his schedule and decided to book us together. As we were learning the same topics in calculus, I was shocked and delighted when Alex started chatting with me afterwards and asked for my phone number. I had never had a boy pay attention to me in that way, and I was flattered that someone that cute wanted my number. Eventually, Alex and I began dating. Alex went to a Catholic school in another town, but because he lived in the same town as I did, he took the bus every morning from my school to his. This gave us most mornings together and he was able to meet my friends. I was a little taken aback when they didn't take him like I did. They mentioned him seeming weird and got super defensive, but let it go. I realized that I'd been spending less time with them than I normally did and assumed they were jealous that I had a boyfriend. As time went on, things got more serious. We started experimenting sexually, and eventually I lost my virginity to him in the back of his Ford Escape. That's when things began to change. While Alex and I always talked regularly, he started getting over the top about staying in contact with me. He would make me stay on the phone with him all hours of the night, until eventually my mom started taking the phone before I went to sleep. This relationship also started taking a toll on my athletic career. I was too tired to spend my extra time training and started skipping my practices to see him, driving 30 minutes each way to his school. Eventually my friends sat me down and told me how unhealthy this relationship had become. I had isolated myself from them, and my entire free time was spent with him. At this point, I wanted so badly to end the relationship. I had fallen out of love with Alex, and college applications were approaching. I had been scouted by no less than 10 colleges, and my plan was to attend Brown, my dream school. Alex's obsession with our relationship had taken a huge toll on his grades, and Brown wasn't going to be an option for him. I remember when I told him that was where I was planning on going, and he freaked out, saying he would never get in there and begging not to go. At the time, I was also recruited by the University of Illinois. Alex applied there, in hopes that I would ditch Brown and go to Illinois with him. That was the final straw for me. I ended things for good with Alex, assuming that would be it. Because Alex would take the bus from my school to his every morning, I still had to see him. I remember walking into school past him and his classmates who took the bus with him, and some of his guy friends yelled slut and whore at me. Apparently, he had spread a rumor that I cheated on him with a bunch of guys and then ended it with him. I ignored it until I started getting Facebook messages from random people at his school. I spent months getting nasty messages from guys at this school, accusing me of having STDs and telling me I was going to get gangbanged by his friends. Eventually, I had to delete my Facebook because it wouldn't stop. I think deleting my Facebook was what set off the stalker tendencies for Alex. He wasn't able to see my face online, so he started calling non-stop and sending desperate AIM messages telling me he loved me. While this was going on, I was the favorite to win the high school championship in my sport. I'd gone undefeated all season. Alex ended up showing up while I was competing for the championship, and I saw him there. It shook me so badly I ended up losing the title. I was furious and heartbroken. I ended up picking up his call that came that night and screamed at him, telling him to never contact me again. That's when the threats began. I got a call a few nights later from Alex after he texted me he had something important to tell me. Stupidly, I answered. He began to tell me how he was going to kill me. He was going to show up at my house when my parents were at work with a rope and a knife and make me suffer like I'd done to him. I started to cry, and he eventually went on to say he was going to get me before I went into school, because he knew exactly where I parked every morning, and my parents were never going to find me. At this point, I had decided to record what was being said and had it taped on my phone. I hung up once I felt he'd said enough. The next morning, I went into school extra early, much earlier than I figured he'd be there. I showed my advisor the recording, who then called my mom. I remember feeling a deep-rooted shame as my mom listened to the recording, like I had done something to bring this on myself. My advisor was so alarmed by the recording, he advised me to go to the police. This day still feels surreal to me. My mom and I sat in the police station all day, explaining the story of my relationship with Alex and how it got to this point. The police then drove to his high school and arrested him while he was in class. The topper on the day, though, was when I went out to bring food back to the police station for my mom, and I pulled into the station at the same time as the car holding Alex did. I saw him in cuffs, and he indeed looked like he wanted to kill me. Post-arrest, I got a restraining order against Alex, and he was sent to a mental institution for a short while. He ended up breaking the RO on more than one occasion. I contacted the police, but they didn't think it was cause to do anything. I think it's important to note that Alex's family was wealthy and had a name in the area, so it wouldn't have surprised me if that's why they brushed it off under the rug. I ended up attending Brown and had to inform them of the RO and let them know that Alex should not be allowed on campus. It's been over 10 years since this happened, and I still continue to receive friend requests and phone calls from him on occasion. I recently moved across the country from where this occurred. I finally feel safe now that I'm far from where he lives, but anytime I get a blocked call or a text from a number I don't know, a thought goes through my head that it's him. It's safe to say that this experience has completely changed who I let into my life and who I choose to date. Alex, let's not meet again. Hi there, thank you for watching. If you wish to see more videos like this, be sure to click on the playlist link down in the description. If you'd like to see more, be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell. If you'd like to get in contact with me and send me your own stories, there's a link to my Discord and email in the description. See you next time.